PharmaPhobic is powered by Achieve the Lifestyle, a company dedicated to helping you empower your health, redefine your lifestyle, and all for the health of it. You're listening to PharmaPhobic, where we challenge the state of health in America. I'm Janie, a physician assistant, and I've seen how healthcare keeps people dependent instead of truly healthy.
And I'm Dan, a veteran turned fitness pro here to uncover the truth and explore simple and sustainable health solutions. From big pharma to big food, we're exposing the conflicts of interest keeping us sick and finding better ways to take back our health.
No fluff, no gimmicks, just real talk, real solutions, and a little bit of fun along the way. Hi, and welcome back to the PharmaPhobic podcast for part 2 with our guest, Nick Davenport. I'm Janie.
And I'm Dan.
All right, so we ended the last episode. We had to keep going because it was just too good. But we ended talking about ADHD, the increased prevalence of it, why we think that is. And so I think we should pick up
That's
there.
part of the reason why we decided to do this a two-parter, because of ADHD out there and people won't be able to consume the podcast. You know, if we went 3 hours, they'd be like, yo, that ADHD hitting, bro. You got me at an hour 20. So let's stop it right there. Let's give you a break, and then let's give you part 2. So I want you right here, okay? I want your attention on this. But anyway, going back to the ADHD, right where we left off, and we're talking about, you know, we're attributing it to, we're just better at diagnosing it, which I think is an excuse. And then we're talking about the multifactorial nature of why this thing seems to be rising in our population and seems to be more of an issue than it ever was. And Nick was...
Yeah, and I know offline we were kind of talking about how you personally have experience with working with ADHD. So I think that might help kind of your process if we talk about that, if you're comfortable.
Yeah, so I look back, I'm 36, so I was born in the late 80s. So I would think the epidemic of ADHD really took off in the mainstream around the late 90s. So I was probably about to be a teenager at that point. But looking back at my trajectory, I've never been clinically diagnosed, but since I've been in the field, I know now that I fit almost every criteria because looking back, because usually going back to diagnosing, right, it's not just I forgot my phone, I forgot my wallet, my keys. You have to look at the presentation of it, the intensity, duration, type, and then when did it first occur and how does it explain your behavior throughout? Because everyone forgets their keys. Everyone makes stupid mistakes. But look at my trajectory. So this is something really I had trouble with. I mentioned that I had behavioral issues. And I was raised in a 2-parent house. I'd say my dad's police. So I had a good upbringing. My dad's a military man, Marine, police. I had a strict but fair upbringing. So my behaviors didn't always match that because I would get too emotionally. Because this is a part of ADHD people don't talk about is rejection sensitivity. Have you ever heard this term before? Mm-hmm. So I personally take almost everything personally. Not because I have some problem like I'm overly emotional. It's just my brain automatically goes impulsively to, you didn't like what I said, you didn't like what I did. I actually had a back and forth with one of my department heads in psychology department at Kaiser, and I'm saying this because I apologize afterward, but she said, I hope you're not taking, she's a therapist, so she therapized me. She said, I hope you're not taking this personally. And I told her, I was like, since we're both in the same field, well, she's more clinical, but I was like, be transparent, I am. Because that's just how my brain works, because that impulsivity is not just doing crazy daredevil things, which I unfortunately have done too. I've jumped off of 2-3-story buildings, not the smart stuff. I've done a lot of things. Looking back at 36 up until probably 28, I started really realizing it because that's when I was doing my clinical work that, dang, I check almost every box because I would fail my GPA. You ready for this? My college GPA was 2.1. My first semester, I had a 1.2. I lost my track scholarship. I lost my academic scholarship. But why would a guy who's smart, who had an academic scholarship and a track scholarship, lose it all? But everyone else didn't know. This is 2007. It's not that long ago. So people are like, oh, he just ain't focusing. He's not doing well in school because he's doing nonsense. Another fun fact, I'm very introverted. I didn't party. I didn't drink. My first drink, I was 18. I tried, I forget what it was, but it was some disgusting bottom of the barrel stuff. And that was my first only time. That was 18, first year of college. My next one was 21 on my 21st birthday. So I didn't do drugs. I didn't drink. I didn't party. I stayed to myself. My teammates thought I was an outcast. So for the person like that, why are you failing out of school? But looking back on my history, elementary, I would get picked on because I was different. I just thought different. I would purposely do things that was just weird because that's how my brain worked. I would win poetry contests. I would win drawing. I was a very good artist. But when it came to the school stuff, I'll be falling behind. It was like, why? He's a great student, but why his grades don't mimic that? Looking back, my parents didn't know better. No, because going back to your point, we didn't look at this stuff. So they just said, why isn't Nick doing what he's supposed to do? But then another semester, I get straight A's. But you have to look at what were those classes. And I told you, I love history. I can name every president from George Washington to Trump. And I can give you a little fun facts in between. It's like a fun party trick I do. So basically, I just only cared about what I cared about. So why is his history grades A, his writing grades A, his math grades D, his science grades F, and this was throughout elementary to high school. So looking at my trajectory, it didn't make sense to me as a kid because I know I'm not dumb. I know I'm not a bad kid, but why am I getting suspended? Why am I getting arguments with the teachers? Why am I getting like into fights with people who technically just friends or associates that I have no beef with, but this is what happened. So all the symptoms that we talk about, like the impulse, all that, I dealt with them. And now at 20 or 36, I've learned how to cope with it. So indirectly, with no medication, I'm my own like Marie Curie. I practice what I preach. So it's not saying do what I did or do as I say, because I'm not the overall official on this, but I can speak to that. There's never been a medication put in my body other than like a painkiller for an injury or something because I played football, ran track. But it's like I was able to do it because my brain's always been challenged and stimulated in ways that fill my capacity. Before the age of 18, before I graduated high school, I've made over 150 songs, written and recorded, put on a CD. For those a little bit younger, we used to use CDs. But anyway, I know they know what a CD is. But
It's this thing.
But yeah, I had over 150 songs written, recorded, sealed on a CD at the age of 18. By college, I had over 200. By this point, I have over 300. That's how I made my brain work for me. I always was writing something down. I got a stack of books probably this high of composition books that I could show you from just things I wrote that never got put out, never got recorded, whether it was a song, a poem, from probably 10 years old to 28. I just have, because I just do this stuff. Social media, you guys follow me, see it. I'm always posting. And sometimes like the anxiety song, we talked about it on the other episode. That didn't do nothing for me. That was not a monetary thing. I didn't get paid for that. It actually took a lot of work. It took me 2 hours to write the song, record it, and then edit the video. So I had to find all these ways to channel energy. And that's not what we're doing to get to the main point. We're not doing that with these people, especially the kids, before we go. If you're going to go the pharmaceutical route, did you try these steps? Did you say, hey, let's put Johnny, let's say he is in sports. Sports is great for ADHD. But let's say you put him in a sport like baseball. I love baseball. But guess what? Certain people, baseball ain't going to work. 80% of the game is standing and waiting. Johnny ain't going to do good in baseball.
Actually, it's a very fine focus sport. You're right. That's true.
Not saying you can't be ADHD and excel in baseball. Sure you can. But you maybe should try soccer or basketball, something where there's a lot of exchanges, back and forth. Did you try that? Or put them in something that's engaging. Like nowadays, there's a lot of computer and iPads. Try coding. It'll be a skill they can use when they graduate, make hundreds of thousands of dollars fresh out without a degree. Like I want to get my daughter into coding and stuff. So it entices to do something that they're already going to do. They're already going to look at a screen. At least do something that's going to make them money. So find ways to get your kids involved into things that can make you fulfill these gaps, because why it's called deficit disorder, right? Keyword, there's something lacking of the said attention. It's just misplaced.
There's a lot there because that involves trial and error where you're trying stuff and you might not like it, and then some people might go one thing and be like, oh, this isn't gonna work. This avenue of like trying things to channel my energy isn't gonna work because I tried this one thing and it didn't work. Whereas, listen, like we always tell you with this health pursuit thing, there's a lot of trial and error involved, and you got to keep trying and trying and trying because we're talking about long-term health here. Like, oh, this eating strategy didn't work. You know what? I'm just going to go back to eating Mickey D's every day. No, my guy, you got to keep going. You got to keep trying to figure out how to get, healthy meals and all this stuff. This workout plan didn't work, so I'm just going back to the couch. No, you got to keep going. So that's what he's saying with the fighting the deficit disorder type stuff, where the strategies that'll be the answer for you are going to require some work. And again, we go back to what we were talking in the previous episode, this active and passive component where it's not this or that, it's the whole thing.
There's gender differences too, though. I didn't speak on that, but like say the hyper side is usually seen more in boys, and then the more passive is seen more in women or girls. And it's like they get left out a lot because since they're not hyper, all the boys get the attention because you see them jumping around in their seats at school or acting up or cursing or yelling. But the girl, she just locked in doing her doodles on her notepad or whatever. So she gets overlooked. So there's even a gender disparity when it comes to these. So if there is a diagnosis, sometimes it comes a lot later because you just don't, you can't, like I said, you can't find what you're not looking for.
Right.
They can't see her just drawing in a notebook, doodling, which is her being inattentive, but it's not going to be hyper though. So that's why the H in ADHD got added later because there was ADD, but then the H is like, okay, they're jumping around out their seat, but not everyone does that either. And that goes back to just mental health in general. Not everyone presents the same. Like there's other factors that go into it.
I tell Janie that I have it, and I think she would agree. I
think you have traits. Like Nick was saying, you can not be diagnosed, but you can have traits of it.
I have, for example, like if I'm training somebody and I see something out of place in the gym. And guys, if you ever come to the gym where I work at, or any gym where I've worked
you
at,
have straight OCD. I'm not arguing.
You'll know that Dan Brown's in the building because the numbers are facing a certain way. Everything's organized in a certain way. So you could just walk in, people that know and be like, Dan Brown works here. Because look at those dumbbells, the way they're placed, whatever. But if I see something out of place and I'm over here training somebody, I literally have to stop and go over there and do it. And it just interferes with my train of thought in a way where I can't get back, you know what I mean, until I address the situation. But there's mental exercises that I start doing, or when I'm sitting down and programming on a computer, I am not meant that I didn't become a trainer to sit at a desk. I purposely joined the military because it wasn't a desk jockey type of job. Like, I know this about me. Like, I need to be out, I need to be moving, I need to be out and about. But when I have to do those things, it is very hard for me to sit there and just focus on the thing. Like every minute, phone, something, boom, and I'm looking for ways to like go off and do stuff. But I'm figuring out, I'm doing the walking process on how do I hone my concentration. And it's challenging as hell. Like, for example, I got to do computer work. I tend to do better on a desktop than I do on a laptop. So if I operate on a desktop, it's got a separate mouse and a separate keyboard, I can actually focus for a little bit longer, or the bigger screen, that sort of thing. It's still probably...
No, so it makes sense because in grad school, I had to meet with somebody we talked about this earlier, but I had to meet with somebody to strategize my studying approach to optimize it. So your environment plays a role. So that's where the desktop, like that. Also how I study, right? So that I'm able to comprehend and grasp things, which is more visual for me. So I think these are all like trial and error, like you were speaking, that unfortunately most kids today, they don't check these things off first before medication is introduced, or if a medication is introduced, this stuff isn't done alongside. And I think that's
and people don't want, and it's like everything, man. It's unfortunate. There tends to be a reluctance to walk the path of trial and error to figure out what is going to work for you. And honestly, to the point where we don't even adopt it as a strategy. It's not even something that's considered as a strategy to be like, hey, we need to figure out how they can manage energy here and here, these physical outlets, that sort of thing. And if anything, we're actually taking out the options out of the school system. Like PE is no longer really a thing.
Yeah, if schools cut funding and
Art,
you can, the creative things tend to go, right?
I'm working on sorry.
No, which is something that could have helped manage if your day is like math, science, PE. Boom, now you're back. You come to history, after you ran around and did your thing. Then you got art later in the afternoon, and you get these breaks that make you more efficient afterward.
Are you familiar with a term called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor?
Yes.
So there's a study, I think it's more of an unofficial study. They did it with these kids in Naperville, Illinois. It's like a suburb outside of Chicago. And they looked at or three sets. So it was P before science, P before math, and just regular day. So what they saw was the people at P first before math and science, they scored higher on a world-acclaimed test out of all countries like Japan, Korea, Philippines.
I think I read this stuff.
And America, not America, but the students in this program scored like top 4, and they're in a class of some elite level countries. Mm-hmm. And what they saw was the ones who were placed in the classes that had a P first were the ones who we're scoring this high. So bringing the BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, this is something, and just exercise is secreted through your bloodstream in higher volumes at about 30 minutes of hard exercise, give or take moderate hard exercise. So it's already secreted, but the catch is you need to do something cognitively engaging right after, within like a few hours. So going to school right after that. So that's what happens, because what BDNF does, there's a region of the brain called hippocampus, which is learning, long-term memory. And when you need to take tests, study, what do you need? Long-term memory, learning. So the neurons in this region, not all neurons, because neurogenesis gets talked about, the birth of new neurons, but it's in the region of the hippocampus, learning and memory, long-term memory, they actually build stronger connections and grow new neurons, meaning your capacity to learn and remember and retain is growing. So that's what the study showed. And basically, going to your point, like getting people more active, that's why it's so important to have this multidisciplinary approach. That's why Mind Body One is so important, how we implement this, because it's not about saying you need to be a jack of all trades. But going to my situation, I didn't know 25 years ago when I was just reading research articles and going to my backyard, I was basically doing this.
Yeah.
I didn't even know it. But this is something that helped me. And then going back to the whole hippocampus, new neurons, if your brain has more capacity to format these behaviors, because that's the name of the game. If I can't retain, and because behavior is not just I want to do something. We revert like to what we already have processed and learned. So if I can't retain, like if we even get to like go into depression, I know we're talking about ADHD. Depression deals a lot with similar characteristics, because when we talk about the hippocampus, when you get depressed, what do you usually do? You remember and recall the things that are making you not feel well, and your brain keeps doing it. So if I can form new neuron pathways to then enhance better productive memories, this is where the exercise factor comes into mental health and things like depression, ADHD, because now my brain can retain and build new memories versus reverting to the, oh, I miss her. Oh, I lost my job. Oh, this tragedy happened to me 10 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever. Now our brain can actually physically grow. That's something we talk about exercise. We never mentioned. We talk about endorphins all day, the feel-good stuff, and that's not even technically true. It's more so endocannabinoids, the receptor for marijuana. That's actually what helps us with the euphoria. Endorphins help us with the pain relief, but that's a whole other topic. But yeah, the doing that physical aspect of mental health is good just for that reason, without even getting to how we do it with the mind drills and stuff like that.
Yeah. I saw another study, you mentioned that Naperville one, but that's not the one I was talking about. There's a cognitive function improvement, again, with kids when they made them do resistance training prior to class. When they went back to the classroom, they had better improved cognitive function, and on tests and everything, they were on, like basically they get like a little boost, a mental boost. And that's crazy, to think. And then you mentioned this Naperville one where it's like, hey, there's chemicals, there's stuff happening when you move your body that make you better at the cognitive stuff as well.
And this comes, once again, I keep using, because evolutionary psychology is not my specialty by any means. And a lot of people don't even like the field because they think, oh, it's not a good explainer. But it does have a lot of relevance, because this goes back to the hunter-gatherer days. We would walk for miles a day, I think between 8 and 10 miles sometimes, depending on the situation. And you would have to think about, okay, this route last time there was another tribe try to kill us. This route had more deer. This route had a cliff that one of our guys fell off and died. So you're always thinking, you're always moving. So we evolved to think and move. So that's why the BDNF is an adaptation to that. There's so many adaptations that our brain and body does that we don't get to use as much. And that goes back to that evolutionary mismatch of why we have these quote unquote disorders. We're just not using things. Like going back to my analogy with the Ferrari, like if you're going to get something high functioning as the human brain, you're not using it when movement was a big part of our brain for thousands of years. And then in the last, say, 150, it's almost been zero.
Yes, I love that point. So I think that, and I've observed this in of one study of me, that because we are so sedentary now, that I find like if I were to go to therapy, or even when I was sitting for my board exam for PA, you get optional breaks throughout. I would take all the breaks and do push-ups in the room, because it's a testing center, so you're not allowed to leave this one room because they're afraid you're going to go get answers somewhere. But I would just, and there's other people in there just sitting in chairs taking their break, and I'm like doing push-ups and air squats and stuff just to like try to get stuff going. And I don't understand the brain actual science of it, but I just know I'm able to focus better if I do some activity. When I went to therapy, I'm able to quiet my mind and get to the root of things if I'm active before therapy and all these things. So it's kind of on the same line.
No, that's exactly, that's literally, but you just proved it within your anecdote. That's why I like anecdotal experience, because that's literally what it is. You trained your body to be more accommodating to your brain doing these things. So when you go do the therapy after being active, that BDNF, that's still active, and now your brain has to function. If you do it's kind of like when we say take the creatine and that's it. It's the same thing. Exercise for the physical standpoint obviously is great, but for the mental standpoint, you didn't have to put it in motion. That goes to why the study you mentioned with the strength training, because that's why going to that Zercher squat drill I did, like I said, why that version is way more extreme. It calls to that because I had to do an external cue to make me squat, and I had to remember all the colors while doing it, and then the motor function to keep my form. And I did the Zercher because it's uncomfortable. That was the only reason. People was like, why you do the Zercher? Some people didn't even know what the Zercher was. So I was like, because it doesn't feel good.
Non-Zerchers do.
And goes back to that ACC, right?
Yes.
Which don't feel good, makes that region stronger. So that's the mind-body way. Implementing all these, I'm just taking science and putting it into action. That's really all this is. And that's where I think my superpower is, that I've been able to take that book work and make it applicable. And that's why a lot of people who come across me, I've done conferences, and they don't know how to take it. They literally look at me like, what is this? I've gone to like 3 conferences last year where I spent money to be a vendor to show off these methods, and my table only got filled because Forrest Griffin came up from the, so he came up, UFC legend.
Put the UFC on the map.
He came up, he's like, you were a Poirier. And we had a whole convo. I had my mic set up. We had a podcast. Like, everyone crowds around, and all people like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, that's what it took. When I was telling y'all how we integrate the physical, the mental. Fun fact, there's a guy named Coleman Griffith. He's called the father of sports psychology. So he's basically the Freud for my industry. His method was, let's talk about the personality aspects of performance, the cognitive reaction side, the team dynamics, the mindset stuff, and let's put it all together. And this was 1925, or 26, almost 100 years ago. And guess what happened? All the coaches, he worked with the White Sox and the Bears in Chicago. They was like, this is bull crap. So he walked away from the sports psych and just did general, like he just started teaching it at a university. And his work obviously would later go into the actual field of sport and performance psychology, which still exists, but they veered so far away from his message where it's more just clinical. So at these conferences, everyone's talking about like the clinical side, which I said there is a lane, but for that 12%, great. That 88% that needs day-to-day mental health, this is where we come in. This is just like fitness. There's a person who's going to need physical therapy. They're not going to need that if they're already healthy. They need something to maintain so they don't have to go to physical therapy. And that's where we come in. That's our side of the business.
I like that you revert back to that evolutionary stuff, because I think a lot of the answers are in the past when it comes to health, and it comes to a lot of our general health and staying, functioning optimally. I think we were meant, my opinion, we're meant to do certain things. There's certain functions that the body has to fulfill. Like if I look at it from a strength and conditioning perspective, your body starts shutting down range of motion if you don't use it. So it works with that use it or lose it type thing. We have a lot of stuff, environmentally speaking, that put us in you're not using it, so therefore your body's gonna dump it. It's gonna lose it. Think of it like not doing math in your head for a long time, then you lose that skill because you're relying on the calculator.
I was trying to do long division the other day in my head, and I'm like,
I used to be really good. Don't tell me to do it now.
But if what you're saying is true, because if you think about it, what's like the rave right now? Red light. Okay. Well, what happened to us getting up in the morning and getting the morning sunshine and being out at night and getting the evening
there's a
sunshine?
whole lot of red light out there in the morning.
Cold plunges. What happened to us or saunas, right? So both. What happened to us being exposed to temperature extremes, because now we're in temperature controlled buildings all the time. So the things that were grounding mats, what happened to us walking barefoot outside, So the things that the elite few who can afford to have the red light panel in their house, the sauna in their house, the cold plunge and things like that they're preaching like, this is how you obtain extreme health. It's just doing shit we used to do all the time when we didn't have all the luxuries we have now. So I think that, and I know it's not your specialty, but understanding evolutionary psychology, I think, is really important, because where we came from is how we got here. So it can't be bad. Yeah,
and you can apply that to movement. You can apply that to food too, where you start, obesity is a problem now, and all these mystery illnesses are popping up chronically. But we can't look at the fact that we're eating stuff that wasn't around 100 years ago. You know what I mean? And we're eating a lot of it. and that if you tend to eat the way that people were eating over 100 years ago, some of that stuff tends to resolve itself, so, and it goes to the same thing with the psychological stuff. And I really like that. I always revert back to, okay, 100 years ago, would we have been doing this when there was no ecstasies, wasn't a problem? Were they doing this? No? Okay, then we need to kind of look that behavior and start probably emulating that and navigating some of this stuff, the phones, the computers, the lights at all hours of the time that could be robbing us of function in the brain.
I think a lot of it's learned helplessness too, because going to your point of we didn't have this hundreds of years ago. So I got a good story for this. I had a guy who used to train more fitness. This was before I think I was building Mind Body and all this stuff at some point, but it was a little before that. But basically, his story is amazing. He's from French by way of Morocco. So he's Moroccan, but he was born in France. And I think he has some property in Haiti. So he was fishing with some buddies off the coast of Haiti. The boat capsized. Everyone died. But he was floating in the middle of the Caribbean, which he would later find out would be almost 20 straight hours. Just treading water in the middle of the Caribbean.
Treading water.
So a fisherman from Haiti happens to cruise by and saves his life. So that isn't a takeaway. Great that he was saved.
Yeah.
But the takeaway, what he told me, and I could see in his eyes, like, he was going back to trauma. That's traumatic. Everyone died but you. And then there's survivor's remorse. So he looked me in the eye and I could see in his eyes like, dang, he went back to that moment. He said, if I had known my situation that I was in the middle of that far away off the coast, I would just drown. I would just gave up. But his will kept going because that survival instinct of, I just got to keep treading. And this, when we talk about mental coaching and like all that type of stuff, I like to use these anecdotes because this is a real person and that's powerful because obviously we can talk about the Jordans and the LeBrons, great. But he's an everyday person. He has successful business, granted. But the fact that his willpower to stay treading, but going to the point, if he had known, that's that learned helplessness and going to the point why we are so susceptible, I think, more to mental illness, is that we accept it. Because people got depressed in ancient times. People got depressed 150 years ago. But it wasn't allowed to by either environmental means or straight up, hey, get back to the field and go farm because if we don't do this, we have no crops to eat.
Yeah.
There was no grocery stores. You were the grocery store. So it's like we didn't have the ability to do it. So now we have this like a bad case of learned helplessness where we're okay with just saying, I'll never not be depressed or I'll never not be anxious, which is hard. I'm not discounting the hardness of it. The brain is a powerful thing. So when you believe what your brain's telling you to believe, it's kind of contradictory because you control your brain, but at the same time you don't. It's like a revolving door almost.
Yeah, I wonder too, because there's a difference between chronic depression and then you have a moment of a mood dump and that could last a day or two, and I wonder if we go back in the day, what was the thing, like, hey, you're experiencing some sort of disappointment. So you have a mood dump for a few days, and we get the biochemical reaction that happens that also plays a part into depression, whatever it may be, versus somebody who's chronically depressed for an extended period of time. And is it after a traumatic event or is it just so, quote unquote, you just happened to hit a mood dump and you never recovered? It's very interesting. Obviously, we won't know the answer. And even if it was out there, they wouldn't give it to us because we got to get people on these medications and we can't tell them that, hey, this is how we used to do it back in the day. And people had, we'd give people more hope with these methods. Either way, whatever we're doing now, we need to include this stuff, all these physical options and working through the problems and that mental exercise of like,
I'll be honest, a lot of people whether it's the clinic, because since I've been in the clinical side and now I'm in the more applied performance side, the clinical side, a lot of their practice, it's just like doctors. A lot of them are not in the best physical health far as not even just fitness. Like, let's not even go to fitness, but I'm going to bring it up actually because I never talk about this.
No,
I want to talk about it.
I'm very passionate about this, so please speak on it.
In my field, let's say, because performance psychology is different than clinical. For those who don't understand, clinical is more so diagnosing. You're going psychopathology, bipolar depression. So I started that route. I left it because I just didn't think I was a good fit for it. I went performance psychology, which is more so helping with your mental skills, whether it's mindset, cognitive performance, reaction time, putting you in the ability to perform. And it could look a lot of different ways. So since I've veered on both lines, I've got to dance on different borders to understand how to get the best approach. Now, I'm not saying my way is a one size fits all, but I know for a fact, and it goes out to my future professionals, like the interns I talk about, take heed, because when I walk in a room, I'm 6'1", 220. I'm not as lean as I used to be, but I'm still pretty strong and athletic. I still probably run a sub 540. I still can squat over 400, bench 300, and deadlift 5 something. So I'm okay. I'm 36. I can keep this up for another 10 years. I'm good. But basically, when I walk in there, they believe in me, not only because I know what I know. When I walk to an NFL room with a bunch of guys making $10 million a year, and I look kind of like them, it's like, maybe he knows something, because I'm be real, that's part of, just with fitness, that's part of the job too. If I'm working with high performers in any field, let's take it out of sport. When I walk into a corporate office, most CEOs, they envy the high performing athletes, the military, the police. So when you come in there with some kind of authority, not saying you have to be the shredded bodybuilder, but it shows that you just don't think it, you do it. Like right now, I could go do a hard task. Like I talk about my bike story. I won't go into full detail, but for 7 months, I was riding a bike around Broward County to Miami.
Bro,
We're talking about 40 miles a day sometimes.
Risking your life, son.
And I almost got hit probably. Matter of fact, I'll tell you one story from that situation. And this was a freak accident. It wasn't even traffic. I was in a neighborhood area. I just turned too sharply and I hit the edge of the sidewalk where the grass meets. I flipped off. I didn't even know the Apple Watch had this feature. It said, "Did you just fall?" And I hit hard. So I was concussed for like months. Months. And I did that for so long. So it's like, it's just that people understand, like, all this goes in together. Like, so when it gets to that learned helplessness or just how we navigate mental health, it's all about how do you attack it? How do you get through it? Because in my field, on the performance side, I'm not there to just tell you, hey, here's some techniques. Let's talk about it and vent. I'm more so, how can we get to a solution and you not fall to this as much? Keyword as much. You're going to revert. I'm not going to say you're never going to be anxious again. Yeah. That's ridiculous. If you're a baseball player in the bottom of the ninth, you should feel nervous. If the game's on your shoulder, you should be afraid. But guess what? I always say this. Anxiety is just a bad fortune teller. Think of it like a multiverse. This side of the world, you're a frog, you're a firefighter, you're an actress. This side of the universe, you're a lawyer. But you got to pick which branch of that multiverse you're going to choose. And that's how I say anxiety. So the bad fortune teller says, hey, your future is this. Imagine the crystal ball. Your future is this. But now you're going to say, you know what? You're wrong. My future is that. And try to find the middle ground, because maybe that is too grandiose, like I'm going to be world champion. Maybe you're not world champion yet, but you're not a loser either. Find that route, that branch is going to take you like a multiverse. Like there's a world where you are the champion. There's a world where you gave up. You need to choose which one's going to get you closer. And that's why when I tell people, when you feel this way, it's fine. It's like the what's the song? Lose Yourself. Palms are sweaty, knees. Like that's somatic anxiety. He was about to go on the stage and perform and kill it. That's why he had the knees weak, arms are sweaty, you know? Don't be like the I'm really dating myself. Y'all probably know the song, The Cranberries.
Yes.
Zombie. In your head. Yeah. I'm a horrible singer. I'm a rapper, not a singer. But basically, that song literally says, in your head. Don't be in your head. Like, obviously, the brain's going to think these things, but when you get to the point where you just ruminate, you fulfill that prophecy. Right? You become what you thought about.
Yeah.
It's cliche, but it's pretty true.
And I think takeaway there is that there's an active component to this. You're not going to nootropic and pill your way or smoke your way out of this. It's like there's things that you need to be doing in conjunction with. So like, I think ultimately the thing is looking for a solution, not a management strategy. Yeah. Makes sense? It's two different mindsets when you're looking to solve a problem versus when you're looking to cope. Be like, hey, I'm just going to put a Band-Aid on this and carry on. And that's fine too, but the solution needs to be in mind.
Well, I think sometimes, you know, as you say, like it's inevitable. You're going to feel depressed again. You're going to feel anxious again because that's just the, you know, highs and lows of life, right? And so I almost think it's learning to cope with it, not by means of medication, but by tools of how do you get yourself out of that situation is more useful than being in therapy indefinitely because you can't ever solve it. Right? Does that make sense? Because sometimes with conventional therapy, I think some people go to try to solve, like, I want my anxiety to go away. I want my depression to go away. Well, what are you doing to manage it? What are you doing to cope with it? Well, I just continue to go to therapy and talk about it. But it's like, but what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know?
I see that person an hour a week. You got 24 hours a day. That's 167 other hours you have to yourself.
Yeah.
It's more of that than with the therapy.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that
yeah, you took a step. Like, hey, I'm going to therapy. Okay, congratulations. That's a good step. You decided to take an action, but then you stop right there. And you forget that or you don't even know, or you choose not to engage, that there's a whole slew of other things that are going to help you that you also need to include.
Yeah, because some people just check the box of going to therapy, but they don't get any better.
I mean, and you need to
the feelings of hopelessness because nothing's getting better, but they know they need to go to therapy. So then I think they're like stuck in this little cycle.
And you need to be active participant in therapy too. You need to actually talk about some stuff. Imagine people, and they're out there, go to therapy. I'm going to therapy. But you're sitting over there like, just, nah, and being combative and not talking about it. And I've been that guy.
Yeah.
I've done that. So,
and it takes a therapist, because we talked about this offline, that challenges you. So you shouldn't love your therapist 100% of the time. You shouldn't be like, oh, they're great 100% of the time. There should be a certain percentage of the time where you're like, I hate my therapist because they challenge you. They hold you to something to then help you grow. And so I don't know if you can speak on that.
There is a me-focused philosophy or school of thought in therapy. I had a lady named Amy Morin. I don't know if you heard. She wrote a book called 13 Things Mentally Strong People Don't Do. And she has a whole series around it. So I had her on my podcast, and we talked about this a little bit, and I was eager to hear her thoughts because this is my take. There's a lot of that, more so, does it feel good, me day type stuff? And she agreed with me. She criticized it too. It's like there's a lot of that going on in a lot of therapy where if it's like, oh, if you need to take a me day, then just do it. And that's not real self-care, because if your self-care hinders another person's self-care or just life, is that really because a person who really cares about self will make sure their adjacent people will be all right too. Because if you just say, you know what, I'm canceling everything today, but then 10 people are negatively impacted because you're not going to do this. Unless it's an emergency, fine. But if just like, I need a me day, true self-care is going to what you said. You would have made a strategy to manage this. So if it got to that point, you wouldn't be just negating responsibility. And a lot of that happens in the clinical realm a lot. And that's kind of one of the reasons I got distance from it and left it, because that's really not how, because as a therapist, you're going to have your personal biases. You got to check them. They're still going to be there though. And I know for me, I have biases, and I felt that mine wouldn't have worked well because I just wouldn't have been that person to confirm your feelings in a way where if you're looking for that doubling down on, you hear me? My mom did this, or, oh, my husband did that. And you just want me to say, dang, I can see how that makes you feel. Like, no, sometimes I'm going to have to say, what did you do in this? No one wants to hear that. And that's what therapy is kind of became. Not saying this, I'm saying this the majority, because I have a lot of friends who are still in the industry that stayed in that program and are doing great. So I'll say it's more good than not good, but it's becoming more typical, like online, where you got the social media therapists who are therapists who put their stuff on there, or the people aren't therapists who put their stuff on there, where it makes it more normalized on the, just do what you feel, what feels good. Because forget mental health. What in the world came out of feeling good? Very little. Vacations, great. Take your vacation if you need to. But if that's the only thing you're striving for, don't be mad or don't get mad when you didn't get to where you wanted to be, whether it's fitness, business. I have so many people who are, like, say, keep your friends accountable. I had to call out friends and say, Nick, man, you lucky, man. You business. It took me 12 years for my business actually could pay my bills, and now I have people working with me. And it's like, you're not willing to do that. So it's been 3-4 years and you're not still there. I don't know what to tell you.
This goes back to our comfort epidemic episode, because it's like we're in a construct where we're basically being pushed to seek out comfort and convenience at all costs, and it's to our detriment a lot of times, because like you said, like being comfortable all the time doesn't really get you anywhere. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's cliche. Oh, get out of your comfort zone. Yes,
it is, but
it's cliche, but it's true. You know?
Well, it goes into the whole brain thing that you were talking about for growth, the ACC. If you're uncomfortable,
that region grows literally, like gets more stronger.
Yeah, and same thing with willpower. This is something that they found. I think Huberman's the one that talks about it, that the more you challenge it, the more you get. You know what I mean? So, how do you say no to those cookies type of thing? It's like, well, I've said no so many times that now it's like, every time I say no, I get stronger in my ability to say no. But the first 10 times you said no, it was hard. You know what I mean? And if you were really uncomfortable, but now by time 12, you're like, nah, I'm good.
And that's why people have told me, like, my screen name online is Mr. Mental Muscle, and that's not a screen name. That's my life. People say, you handle adversity very well. And it goes to what you just said. When you've had so much, now it's like, it goes back to what I always say, you revert to your, like, I want to make your worst performance better because you're going to revert to that. Therefore, my worst performance got to the point where, like, it might sound a little cocky, but I've failed more than most people have tried. And it's like, it's going to be hard for me to feel some type of way because you're hurt by it and you lose your cool because you ain't tried. So, of course, it's like a tourist and a resident. I've been here so many times. I live here. You just came here for the first time. So you're like, oh my God, taking pictures, enjoying it, frantic, because you've never been there. And that's great. Be the tourist for a little bit, but eventually you have to become the resident. I'm the resident now. Failure, stress, pain. I become a resident of it. Like when I see, matter of fact, I know we got to wrap up soon, but there's a Family Guy episode. I haven't watched in years, but I remember this episode. It was one of their many millions of cutaways, and it was a monk. And they're like, I have a new Hyundai or Toyota, whatever, Prius for you. And he hands them the keys. And the other guy said, I have this tie clip. And the monk's like, these are the same. So I made a post on my Instagram and it got like 50,000 views. I'm like, I need to make more posts like this. So I took that clip, but where the guy had the Honda keys or the Toyota keys and the other guy had the tie clip, I put adversity, pain, or growth or something like that. And I was like, these are the same to me. Mm-hmm. I do not interpret stress and success that differently because they're just two sides of the same coin.
Good point.
It's I'll use jiu-jitsu analogy here from last night, fresh in my mind. I went the roll and I came home and I was pissed. Because whenever I'm not performing to what I feel is to my expectation, which expectation, reality, because I'm not the only one that's getting good. The guys I train with are getting good too. So, I might beat you one week and then next week you learn some stuff and you come unveil that on me and I'm like, boom, now I'm the nail and you're on top. But last night I was getting frustrated. I'm like, man, I'm a step behind. These dudes are like, I'm getting whooped up by dudes that don't whoop me. And my response was anger. And then I did something out of anger, kind of hyperextended my elbow. It hurts today. That's what happens when you're 42 years old. But
or even when you react out of anger.
Yeah, exactly. But I reacted out of anger, but I had to sit there for a bit and be like, okay, now this suck has unveiled an opportunity to be like, I got some stuff to work on. And that should be exciting, where the adversity is like, hey, there's room for growth. And it unveils like this, it's like a path opens up and you're like, ooh, I got something to work on. And the act of working on it, listen, I might come back for the next couple of weeks and still get whooped up. But the act of working on it is the reward. That's where you actually get better. That's where you actually deposit in the long-term health box because you're actively working on something. Now take that analogy, put it into the mental health and all this stuff where he's saying like, hey, challenging yourself and challenging these certain things and finding situations for you going through the trial and error process of strategies that are going to help you improve your mental health, your cognitive function, your mental performance is where the reward is. You know what I mean? Yeah. You're thinking about the solution over here, but it's like if you don't go through these little processes of trying things and they don't work and then you try something else, if you don't go through that, you're never going to get the solution.
High performance is cumulative, not linear. It's like what you just said. You have to have that enjoyment of the monotony, the disadvantages. That's where the mentally tough people live. Mm-hmm. So exactly what you said. So you could be a mental coach too. Hey, there's people in the industry who are certified who, like I said, that don't be doing what they need to do.
Yeah, so. You gotta, basically it just goes, you gotta be more process oriented, more so than the solution oriented, I think.
Yeah.
And that's where the fun is. So coming back around for a circle here, and we're probably gonna have to have you on, man, because I got some rabbit holes we could go down.
I'm gonna do an episode where we just talk about conspiracy because I've been a conspiracy theorist since I was a kid with JFK. Ooh, remember I told you I love presidents. So I was like 8 years old back in the early 90s talking about, hey, this don't add up.
Hey, with the stuff that's coming up
I watched
now.
the JFK movie as a kid. I'm like, huh.
Oh, man, we're going to have to bring you back there because we, with the whole health industry and,
we're going to talk about birth control pills.
Yeah, we got, and then with the mental health stuff, there's so much that is out there that I'm trying to piecemeal it to our audience because, listen, I've said it before, I keeps that thing on me, tinfoil hat, always got it in my back pocket. But a lot of this stuff is coming out to be accurate. Oh, yeah. And when you start seeing, you mentioned one with the American Psychiatric Association and the amount of pharma money that they get to be pill slangers and push for options or treatment methods that solely involve medication slanging for any sort of mental health, any sort of cognitive function. So we're gonna have to come back to that, and because we spat a lot. That coals have been spat. What I want to take it back is to what you do, and when you work with people or an organization, like what sort of assessment do your assessment process, and then kind of go into how you implement your methodology with I'm working with this team or this group of people, NSW, whatever it is. That's Naval Special Warfare for the non-military types. So you go in and assess, be like, hey, this is how we can improve your mental function, or this is where you're lacking in mental performance. Take us through that process there a little bit.
That's a good question because it looks a lot of different ways. So the first step is, I'll not sound like a restaurant or a waiter, but I'll be like, what do you actually want first? And then I'll go from there. So let's say, for example, they'll come to me, like I had a guy who's an MMA coach, and he was like, it was for him, not his fighters, but he was like, yeah, I'm dealing with anxiety, depression. I had a concussion, TBI, and I've been dealing with this for X amount, and I was recommended by you. So first thing I asked him was, are you seeing one, a clinical psychologist, two, a physical therapist or anything in that range? He's like, oh, I've done physical therapy. I'm done with that, but now I want to do something that engaged. Then the second question I asked him was, are you looking for more cognitive performance work, like doing that stuff? Because he had seen what I was doing with that. Or do you need more like psychology, like a therapist? He's like, well, I think I need both. So immediately, since I'm not clinical, I would be like, I can work with you on the more performance-based cognitive stuff as well, but not the clinical. So that automatically weeds them out because I do get reached out on clinical stuff, and I always automatically got to refer because I'm not certified to do that. Now, if it veers more into performance and it's more like anxiety issues versus like anxiety disorder, then I can work with that. But
anxiety issues within a
within the performance construct.
Yeah.
So if they say I'm a baseball player, I strike out every time I get in my head, I can do that. But if they say that my mom divorced my dad and I've been drinking more, that's not something I'm going to touch. I'll send them to a clinical psych.
So in the example you gave with that coach, because he wanted both, would you work with him simultaneously as he's working with the clinical psychologist, or you want him to do that prior, or?
Well, I can do both because I would just have to limit because this is the beauty of me personally, not the whole company, but me personally, I can veer in a lot of different lanes. So I know where to cut it off and be like, okay, I'm only, like, I can still talk about mental health stuff. It's not like, because it's not, like you say, it's not siloed. I can't sit there and just, here's some drills that's going to make your memory, your reaction, your balance, your coordination, and not mention any of the, like if I see that he has a lot of bad self-talk doing, like say some of my drills and tasks, the athlete or the client will like be cursing under their breath or getting frustrated. So I'm going to address that. But if it gets like, I'm not going to go into like, so tell me about how your last week was as far as that, because that's where I would stop it. But I do have clients where they're more there for mindset stuff. So I'm doing more of these skills-based psych work. So this means teaching and educating. So this is not me sitting there saying, say there's different types of therapy, right? There's CBT, that's probably one of the most popular. There's obviously psychotherapy. There's Gestalt. So all these different methods have different applications. Me, what I would do falls closer to CBT, but it still has more education than therapy. So it's meaning, what I mean by that is I'm teaching them skills and learning how to, going back to said, management of things. A therapist more so is going to do that as well, but then they're going to dig in more to the person and all those sub levels of it. So I'm never really going into, like, I'm not talking about their childhood. I'm not talking about disorder talk. If it comes to that, refer out. So yeah, so if it comes to like something very deep, like let's say suicide. I've had that happen with me, but with someone I was mentoring, and I would watch all her videos or use Zoom hours. And when I heard it was an MMA fighter, and you work with MMA, this happens a lot. They had an attempt maybe 5 months prior. The first thing I said was, you should have never worked them in the first place. Because God forbid they end up doing it and they're successful. Courts can come into this, and now it's like, hey, let's hear what y'all were talking about. And even though she meant no harm, so I gotta know the line in the sand before I start with them. Now that's easy. Once I know it's not clinical, then I can do pretty much anything. So going to your main point, if they come in, let's say an athlete, they're the easiest ones to use. I'll say, is it cognitive, mindset, both? If they say both, then I make a plan where, like you say, assessments. We'll do a battery of tests that work on working memory, reaction, decision making, balance, hand-eye coordination. And if it's mindset, we'll do like sometimes we have an intake where it's like a questionnaire type thing, something very simple that'll look at their personality traits, any like stress issues, and then we'll tally it up and we'll see what the deficits are, just like fitness. If you do a squat test, a bench, and a deadlift, oh, your bench was weak, so okay, we need more upper body stuff. Same premise, okay, their working memory was low, so they have trouble retaining information in real time. So, because working memory is more so right then and there versus long term is like I'm taking a test and I'm remembering what I studied over 10 weeks or so. So that's how that looks. Now, if they just want one or the other, then same thing. We'll just focus only on cognitive and we'll do an assessment, or we focus only on mental and do an assessment. So pretty much anything outside of the clinical that doesn't require like a diagnosis or like insurance, like that's not something we would cover. This would all be private pay. But basically, we're performance-based. Anything that affects that is where we would come in.
Yeah. And do you work with teams and groups only or individuals?
So me personally, I've kind of veered more into doing a little more organizational because of just time constraints. So like, you know, Caitlin on our team, she does a lot of our youth mental work with like more one-on-one type stuff, mindset. She does cognitive as well. So her range varies. Wagner, you know, Wagner, he's on our team. He does a lot of physical, so he's getting more acclimated with the fitness cognitive performance where it implements the training that has to do in the cognitive reaction as well as strength conditioning and fitness. So everyone has a way they can implement. But me personally, I'm the one who kind of goes like I was with the FAMU's basketball team when they were in the championships for the conference. So I was up there with them for a week, traveling with them, being around them. So I'll do stuff like that, but that's a different ticket item. You know what I'm saying? Like, since I'm the higher up, but basically my goal is always to accommodate what they need. Like almost like a buffet menu. Like I can give you a little bit of this, a little bit of that, just depends on what, and we'll make it to you. That's another thing that's got me far in this industry, that I'm very adaptable, where they see me with law enforcement, they see me with military, then see me with an 80-year-old. Like Maureen, I was working with her, her aunt, and she's in her, I think, mid-80s. So it's like one day I'm working with her, then I'm at another place where I'm working with a high-level athlete. The only reason I can do that is because I understand the foundations and we just mold it to what we need. So it's pretty much what you need. We could figure out how to meet the middle ground.
Keeping that general sense also helps you. Yeah. It sharpens that blade so much that when it's time to specialize, you can go really deep because you've touched so many different types of situations. That is pretty cool. That's how I see it with fitness. Like Dan, what kind of clients do you train? All of them.
Yeah.
And if I may plug, we're developing a few apps. Like we have one that's coming soon that's called Briefs. It's a AI/hybrid human coach, mental coach. So I know a lot of people have different things about AI, but I've been studying and building it for a while. So it's not as crazy as people think. It's basically an algorithm I created where it'll analyze what you need. So if you say, oh, I've been stressed out at work, etc., you give some details, it'll analyze your tone and then give a coaching point that'll give you some feedback and then give you a skill to put into action. So it's not just insights, but it's also action. Great. So it's called Briefs because it's supposed to be short and to the point. So it's more in that solution-based type. And then you also get a video from our library that accompanies whatever might be affiliated with your problem. And then also, if you want a human hybrid, this is where this is where my business brain comes in. Like, say, social media, there's a lot of people talking about mental health and all these topics. So what we did was you get a brief from a coach. So instead of you have an hour-long session, this would just be something 1 to 3 minutes from a coach made to be more parasocial. So it's not like, hey, Dan, I heard you saying you're struggling at work, so I want to tell you. No, it's more so as if you were, so imagine you're just randomly scrolling on Instagram, you saw a post that resonated with you about stress at work. It's basically that, but it was made for you. So it's coming from a real human. So you don't lose that human touch, because only AI, I feel, shouldn't be, because there's already apps that do only AI mental health. And I think that's limiting, and it veers on things like who knows, but at least having that human touch still be there if you want it, then you can still get that. And it's not as intimate as, like you said, with a therapist, which if you need that, cool, go to that.
Yeah.
But for the population in between, you get this brief from us. Now you get something that can help you with your day-to-day mini stressors, because it's subclinical. There's a lot we can do with that. Now, clinical, like I said, that's a different can of worms. So,
and when does that app go live?
So actually, I'm doing some testing now where I could use some people. So anyone watching, and even you guys, could try it out. And then when that drops, it'll have cognitive training drills on it too. So basically, it'll be the full embodiment. You'll have the coaching side is automated, or you can get a real coach, and also have cognitive training to help with the actual brain function. It's going to have videos suggest other things. So it'll be like a like I said, it's an intermediate thing. It's not like a one-stop shop that's going to like replace therapy. If anything, in the future, I might white label it to therapists as a way to wean their clients off. You know what I'm saying? So that's my business brain thinking. So that's something I'm very excited outside of our direct-to-client services. And I guess to plug it in, find us at the Mind Body One on social media. Mr. Mental Muscle is my personal one, which is really not a personal, it's a business too. And then the mb1.com,
Yeah.
where you
And
want
we'll
to find more about our
put
sites.
the details in the show notes for this episode and the previous one because we forgot to ask you for your.
It's all good. They'll find me.
Yeah.
If they want me, they'll find me.
Yeah.
No.
No,
Yeah.
I'd love to be a beta for that app because did you say it listens to your tone or your voice like pitch?
So no. When I say
he-
tone, more like the what emotional tone were you speaking in? Was it anxious? Was it doubtful? Was it
Right.
hopeful? Because let's say it is hopeful. Let's say because you can record your video of it or you can text type. So let's say I like doing record because I actually used it myself when I remember I said that back and forth from my higher up at Kaiser. I actually used it because I was really stressed out and it was right before class. So I talked to it. So basically, let's say I record it and it's like, I know I could be or less sensitive to rejection and understand she wasn't coming at me personally. So it'll peep that and say, instead of just giving you a generic, yes, keep it up. You're doing a great job and make sure you focus on that. It'll be like, see, I noticed that you said that you're able to, acknowledge that and then build off of it versus because the algorithm itself, I had to like really figure out how to make it so it responded in a way that made more sense than just because if you go to ChatGPT, you can just type in, I'm having a bad day and it'll give you some kind of pep talk / positive affirmation. I was like, I didn't want it to be that. I wanted it to be how I would do it, which is figuring out where you fall on your mental state, give you some insight to it, and then what we call the brief. That's the brief, what you get, and you see the theme. So we call it the skill, the FAST, FAS, functional actionable skill. So I'm big on branding and marketing. So
that's great.
The brief gives you the insight, the FAST gives you the how-to. So, and it's all meant to be succinct. And the beauty is outside of just trying to make it effective, we wanted to be more succinct because one part of the app I want the developer to add is make it gamified where you get 5 non-voice video briefs from a coach and 2 from a coach. So 7 a week max. Now, if you go over, you can, but it's like a bar where when it gets to that max, it turns red. So the goal is to use it less. I know that sounds bad because
why would I
promote something that I want to sell to use less? But the goal is if you're more succinct and choiceful with what you give to it, because in a therapy session, in an hour, I could say a lot. We just had a podcast for an hour, could say a lot. But if I got I kind of stole this from Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it now. What is it, 150 characters? So it's not as short, but the goal is if I can formulate my thoughts, it's helping me understand my problem better. Because I can't just talk about it endlessly for 30 minutes and the session's over and the therapist is like, well, next week we didn't get as far as I wanted, but we'll revisit this. No, I have to make succinct thoughts on what I want to say.
So that means you have to really digest it.
So,
oh, man.
And then the responses are, like I said, they're not meant to be, hey, Dan, this is Nick here. We're going to have a team of, like, obviously we have like 4 or 5 on our team now, but I'm trying to get more people in the industry work because there's not a lot of work in this industry for mental performance unless you go like the military route. There's a lot of work there. Sports teams, ironically, are the hardest jobs to get in this industry, but military has a lot of positions for mental coaches. But basically get them work. So let's say we have a team of 50 coaches with different backgrounds, so it'll source you out to the specific coach you need. That way you're not necessarily getting a crutch of, I need to see Nick every time I have an issue. It's randomized from the person from that. So it's not going to be just something, I got to hear what Nick says every time. It's like, it's literally like if you're on social media scrolling, but it's tailored for you. But I'm talking at you or whoever the coach is talking at you in a way where it's as if, I just happened to say something that identified with your problem or your question or your entry.
That's interesting.
So yeah, I'll show you when we're off camera how it works.
Yeah.
It's still developing, but it's got the main framework right now.
All right. So website is MindBody1.
The MB1. MindBody1.com was taken already. So THEMB1, the MB1.com.
And then Instagram, Mr.
Mental Muscle and the MindBody1.
Okay. Awesome. Well, this has been great.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you being here, Nick. And that's that's a whole lot for listeners to chew on right there. That's a big old steak, potatoes with the sides. You got the bread, you got the whole shebangalang on this one as far as the mental stuff goes. I think big takeaway, and Nick really harped on this, passive versus active. There's no one or the other. There's no fork in the road. I'm going to go nootropics. I'm going to take the pill. I'm going to take the quote unquote creatine to improve my mental function. And then there's the, doing the active stuff. It's two things, and it's a highway. It's not a fork in the road. I think that's a big takeaway there.
Yeah. And what I would want to help people realize throughout this discussion is that if you're struggling mentally, it's not only working on your mental health, it's also working on your physical health as well, because it's bi-directional, all right? And if you're only working on your physical health and your mental health is trash, we need to incorporate that as well. So as with what Dan said about the highway.
We didn't even get into how gut-brain connection. We didn't get into, if you're only working on your physical, how trashing yourself physically all the time in the gym could affect your mental health. We didn't,
body image.
Yeah, we didn't get into that. So we'll
and all my stoics out there who think they're above it all, they wrestled. So stop.
Yeah. So that's an episode, guys. We appreciate you being here. If you want to learn more, obviously we gave you Nick's information there that you can go follow him on Instagram. He puts out a lot of good stuff to get your mind right. That's his tagline.
Yeah.
And if not, follow us. We're Achieve the Lifestyle. And if you want to work with us, hit us up, guys. info@achievethelifestyle.com. Send us an email or send us an email, DM on the IG. Go ahead and slide in the DMs because you know why? It go down in the DMs, guys. Thanks for listening to the PharmaPhobic podcast. If you found this conversation interesting, which I know you did, make sure to follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And also make sure to check us out on Instagram @Achieve the Lifestyle. And if you're interested in pursuing a stronger, healthier, more capable version of yourself, check out our website @achievethelifestyle.com.
The PharmaPhobic podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. The views expressed are those of the hosts and guests and do not constitute medical, legal, or professional advice. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider before making any medical or wellness decisions. While we discuss pharmaceutical, holistic, and alternative health topics, our content is not a substitute for professional medical guidance.